Story 1. A man at Walmart around 2003 had a complete meltdown over his spiral notebooks, ringing up at 30 cents each instead of the 25 cents listed on the sign. Composition notebooks were 25 cents, and someone had placed the spiral notebooks back on the shelf in the wrong spot. He went all out, even shouting, "You don't know who you're dealing with," while his teenage daughter begged him to stop. The cashier started crying. It was the first time I ever saw someone so disruptive that they were thrown out of a Walmart. Story 2. I watched the CEO of a company I worked at start shouting and stomping his feet because people weren't listening to his band at a company event and instead were mingling at the bar. He shouted, "This is my party. This is my company. This is my favorite band." I just started laughing. What else can you do? Story 3. In my youth, I worked in a small gift shop. One day during the Christmas season, a well-dressed couple in their 40s entered the shop with an advertisement for a specific item. We had sold out of that item, and they yelled at me, demanding that I order a new one for them or they would claim it was false advertising. I was timid back then, so I quietly explained that it was a limited lot, as stated in the advertisement, and we couldn't order any more. This enraged the woman. She actually stamped her foot and said we had ruined her Christmas. Up to that point, I was annoyed and a little scared by their over-the-top anger. However, when she stamped her foot, I burst out laughing. Seeing a grown woman do that was just so absurd, especially when the item in question was an angel figurine on sale for $5.99. Story 4. I am a security guard and have experienced many incidents, but one notable event involved a drunk woman attempting to drive her car off a two-story parking garage. She struggled to make a turn without scratching the side of her truck. I attempted to advise her to leave her vehicle and not drive, but she refused to listen. Instead, she became convinced that the building's architecture was designed to trap her, and she began screaming, "Help! I'm trapped!" repeatedly. In her attempt to navigate the turn, she damaged her wheel well and gas cap. I cringed as I watched the parts get torn off her truck, making a wretched sound. Despite the damage, she continued driving and eventually collided with another car on the lower level. At that point, I had already documented the incident and called the police. They arrested her for driving under the influence while she accused me of setting her up. A few days later, while checking out of the hotel, she stared at me the whole time and, upon leaving, said, "See you later, Alan. My name isn't Alan." The front desk employee often asked me to tell this story to others while laughing for the entire year following the incident. Story 5. When I worked at a local restaurant and grocery store back in the day, we made a cheese dip called better cheddar to serve with crackers. This is quite popular among the locals. If someone is having a small gathering with wine, you can be sure that better cheddar will be on the table. One 4th of July weekend, we ran out of better cheddar. Our supplier was supposed to deliver more, and most customers understood they could come back the next day for plenty. However, one woman did not take it well. When she learned we didn't have any in stock, she reacted as if we had denied her a life-saving cure. She rushed to the fridge containing our other dips, began opening them, and threw them around the cafe, creating a huge mess. People were covered in spinach artichoke, buffalo chicken, and blue cheese dip. Once the display fridge was emptied, she slammed the door, cracking the glass from top to bottom. Some of the containers she threw even damaged the television and display cases for our gourmet cheeses and prepared foods. The estimated cost of the waste and damage was around $3,000, as the display cases were old, and replacing the curved glass would be a challenge. Ironically, she was a friend of the owner. We all knew her well, as she visited frequently and often caused problems. A few days later, I decided we would not serve her again and refused her service. She became defensive, left, and returned with the owner, much like a child tattling. I had the opportunity to explain to the owner that she was responsible for the damage and the reason we were closed on the 4th to make repairs. The owner was unaware of the true events and assumed the manager had just reported that a customer got angry. The woman tried to deny her actions, but the head chef and I had already retrieved the security footage and showed it to the owner. The owner insisted that the woman would need to pay for the damages and lost product. Otherwise, there would be legal action, and she would not be allowed back until she did. 3 months later, with the glass still broken, I was written up for not serving her. I quit shortly after that and found a better job bartending in the city. Looking back, this was about 11 to 12 years ago. Recently, I went back to pick up some better cheddar for work, and the glass on the dip fridge was still broken in the same way, with some of the dips that had fallen still inside. Story 6. 2 weeks ago in Orlando, my family and I were in a restaurant when an incident occurred a few tables away. A group of men in their late 20s began arguing over slow service. The waiter, manager, and a food runner became involved in a confrontation with the four patrons. The situation escalated, leading to yelling and drama. The group was escorted out, but one man returned and struck the waiter from behind, prompting a busboy to tackle him. 2 other men from the table rushed back in, and cooks emerged from the kitchen. Ultimately, 6 restaurant workers subdued the patrons. The incident ended with the police being there may have been alcohol involved. Story 7. I used to work at a call center for various utility companies, first calling customers with imminent shut-off notices, and then in customer service taking calls. I could write a novel on some of the things I heard, but my absolute favorite was during my first year making payment reminder calls. I called a customer regarding his gas bill. He wasn't there, but his wife answered. For this particular gas company, we were allowed to speak to a spouse if the customer was not present. So I started talking to the wife and began to give her the overdue bill explanation. As soon as I mentioned the overdue bill, this lady lost it. That son of a gun. He told me he paid it. She was crying heavily into the phone. I tried to explain that it was possible he had paid the bill and our system had not yet updated. This happened quite a bit. That's nonsense. Don't start defending him. More sobbing followed. No wonder he was gone 3 hours. Turns out this man had left earlier to pay the bill. He had come home, left the bill and receipt on the counter and left again. His wife was convinced he had lied about paying the bill, forged the payment receipt, and was cheating on her. Took me 15 minutes to get this lady calm enough to call the gas company and confirm that the bill had, in fact, been paid. Story 8. My uncle yelled at me when I was 5. He couldn't stand the fact that I was sitting next to my aunt in the restaurant when he wanted to sit next to her. Story 9. I worked at a movie store as a teenager. A man arrived at 10:15 p.m. after we had closed at 10 o'clock. He saw me in the dark store and tapped on the window to indicate he was returning his movies. I looked at him and tapped on my wrist to show that the movies were already late. He then threw all 3 movies at the window as hard as he could and started cursing at me. After he drove off, I went outside and wrote down all the barcodes. I checked his account and added a note about what happened. I left the movies sitting outside. Clearly, all the movies were stolen. He had to pay the capped late fee, plus he had to pay for replacements. The funny thing is, had he just accepted that the movies were late and dropped them in the bin, I would normally do people a favor and check them in before I finished closing. His childish behavior ended up costing him a lot more money, around $100 in the long run. Story 10. Not necessarily public, but I used to work at an oncology office where someone wanted to reschedule their appointment the day before they were supposed to come in. It was not a big deal. I informed him of my available times, but none of them worked for him. He became irate and told me that I needed to be nicer to him because he has cancer. I sympathize, but everyone here has cancer. Story 11. On my first cruise, my 11-year-old son and I rounded a corner and saw 2 elderly ladies, one standing in the stairwell and another halfway up the staircase, screaming. The 2 white-haired ladies were shouting things like, "I hate you," and "I wish I'd never taken you on this trip." My son's eyes were as wide as saucers. Apparently, any sort of upset that I had displayed in his presence was far eclipsed by the performance of these 2 elderly women. Story 12. A semi-regular customer received assistance from a coworker who had just started that week. This individual typically loves to talk about how he breeds Rottweilers back in Cuba. He would often go on at length while I tried to recommend the supplies he was actually there for. On this particular night, he decided to shift the conversation about his Cuban Rottweilers to his belief that children in Cuba are more mature than those in the United States. He began telling the new coworker how he thought it was unacceptable for an adult to be arrested for engaging in a relationship with a 16-year-old. While scanning someone else's items at the register, I had to quickly, calmly, but firmly interrupt him with, "Sir, this is not the time and place for this conversation." He continued to express his thoughts about how he believed America valued free speech and began ranting, with no further provocation from anyone else. The manager came in and, unfortunately, started ringing him up rather than asking him to leave. Other customers were visibly shocked as he continued ranting about how he wished the entire country would blow up. Thankfully, I never saw him again, but I also never saw that coworker after that week. I can't say I blame her. Story 13. I came across a comment I made about this same question 2 years ago. A sales representative I worked with earned a substantial commission on a multimillion-dollar mortgage. Some of us convinced him he should take us out to dinner since we helped him, and he was a good sport. The sales representative and 3 low-wage earning women from the support staff went out to a local pub. The bank president was there, which was not unusual. He visited local places most nights after work. He came over to greet us, and when he found out why we were there, he became angry that he hadn't been invited. He started yelling at us and banging his fists on the table, then returned to his friends at the bar. We decided he had to be joking. There was no way he could be angry at us for that, so we thought we would be funny too. We asked the server if she would bring him the check but not actually leave it with him, and she thought it was amusing as well, so she did. He was not joking. I have never seen a grown man have such a public tantrum in my life. He was yelling at us until we got up and left, and he would not allow us to take the check back. The next morning at work, my boss, who was supposed to be with us but had something come up, was coming out of the president's office. This man, who never swore in front of women, wanted to know what we did to make his boss so mad that he was trying to order my boss to fire the sales representative who received the commission. Later, we figured it out. Because of that commission, the sales representative earned more money that year than the bank president. Story 14. The weekly market has been as it has been for the previous 2 or 3 months, an ongoing summer event. A man became frustrated and decided to scream at everyone out of his window that he was going to get his gun and harm people, then disappeared. Someone called the police, we were evacuated, and he was arrested. I can't remember if he even owned a gun, but it turned out he was all talk and no action anyway. Story 15. A customer became angry with another customer for purchasing the last PlayStation 5, even though it was a pre-order. The individual followed the PlayStation 5 buyer to his car, yelling and attempting to confront him. As the buyer drove away, the individual began throwing rocks at the car. The buyer quickly left, nearly running over someone. The angry individual claimed he would sue the store because the police were called. It is unclear what happened afterward, but I hope he faced consequences for his actions. Story 16. I watched a 70-year-old Asian lady have a complete meltdown because a restaurant was out of donut holes. She was lying on the floor, screaming, and grabbed the restaurant's credit card machine, refusing to give it back until she got her donut holes. The police were called, and then she claimed she was having a heart attack, so emergency medical services were called, and that's where I came into it. Long story short, she wouldn't let me touch her, so I have no idea if there was anything medically wrong. We let her have her temper tantrum until her daughter, who was there, talked her off the floor. The police didn't issue a ticket but told her never to come back to that restaurant. Story 17. As a former retail manager, I have seen a lot. The most ridiculous incident was when I was called to the register because a woman believed the sales tax was a penny more than it should have been. She purchased a $3 scarf that was half price, making it $1.50. With tax, it came to $1.54. The tax rate was 6.35%, and she thought it should be $1.53. Math isn't my strongest suit, but I explained that the 0.35% likely caused the amount to exceed by an extra penny. She continued to argue to the point of tears and refused to leave. Finally, I offered her a penny, but she declined, paid, and left. Story 18. I used to work at a pizza shop. One day, a lady called wanting to use 2 hefty coupons that would have made her order basically free. However, there are rules that prevent the use of certain coupons together. The lady started to assert her status, claiming she was the executive of an $18 million company, and told me I was poor and worthless for working at a pizza place. I was a delivery driver and was familiar with the trailer park where she lived. It was not a pleasant place. Another time, an older gentleman called, inquiring about the free Parmesan cheese he had requested because someone forgot to include it with his order. Normally, we do not send a driver out for free items, but since he asked for them directly and I had another delivery nearby, I decided to take them to him. He was very nice the entire time, and just as I was about to hang up, he threatened to shoot and kill whoever showed up as retribution for forgetting his free Parmesan cheese. The calmness in his voice as he said that sent shivers down my spine. After that, I had my boss blacklist him. I have many more stories from my 7 years as a pizza delivery driver, but those are the ones that come to mind first. Story 19. I had a flight delayed for 13 hours once. There was a procession of adult outbursts toward the customer service counter. It got so bad that the airline had to call the police to stand next to the counter and deal with the verbally abusive passengers. It was a complete mess. Story 20. I worked at a bingo hall for 4 years, where we sold paper games as well as an electronic computer that played for you. Each computer rental was $30 for the night. During holidays, the jackpots for each round usually doubled, if not tripled, so the place was often packed, to the point that it occasionally became standing room only, and people stood along the walls. Unfortunately, we had 200 computers with a maximum building capacity of 700, so if you didn't get in line early, they sold out quickly. I often had to tell people that they were not going to get a computer for the night. One night, either December 22nd or 23, it was someone's birthday. She had set aside money for a computer, but we had sold out almost an hour prior. Her group arrived after gameplay had started, and all the tables and chairs were taken, so they had to stand. She was upset that concessions refused to give her food for free, as they never gave food away without charge. In the middle of a game, she threw her food at the cashier, drink and all, then ran up to a nearby table of customers, took things off their tables, threw them around, picked up drinks, and threw them at others, snatched up 2 computers and yelled, "It's my birthday!" Eventually, a few former military individuals and her brother stopped her, and she was arrested and charged with several offenses. Most people she hit with food press charges, along with the owner, who pressed charges for damaging several computers when soda was dumped on them, causing them to stop working. I was not interviewed as a witness, as they had plenty of witnesses and security footage. The games continued after a 45-minute delay. I understand that people want to feel special and for things to go perfectly on their birthday, but it was quite a situation. Story 21. I was working in a coffee shop when I was 15. A man came in, ordered a coffee and a donut, and handed me a US bill. Our cash register had a button for US cash, so it provided up-to-the-minute conversion to ensure we gave the correct change. I handed him his change and his order, but he refused it. He claimed I didn't give him the right change and demanded to see my manager. My manager heard the story, reviewed the transaction, and confirmed it was correct by checking the current exchange rate on her phone. She supported me and told him I was right and he was wrong. The man lost control. He threw his change at us and stormed out of the shop. We were at a loss for words. Not only did he pay for the order, but he also left it on the counter when he left. Additionally, he threw his change at us and walked away. What did he accomplish? Story 22. A man missed his flight due to his own mistake. When informed that he could not be accommodated until the next day, he became enraged, yelling, screaming, and stomping his feet. He knocked computers off the neighboring desk and assaulted one of the employees, then had the audacity to try to fly the next day. No, sir, you will not fly again. Attacking an airport employee will get you added to the no-fly list. Story 23. A colleague at work came out of a meeting where he was instructed to change his design on a project, which was a standard part of the process. He angrily returned to his desk, slammed his notebook down, tossed a folder of papers on the floor, sat down, and turned up his music. Normally, we worked in cubicles, but the office was being renovated, so we had no walls and everyone could see this. His music was blasting in an open area. The manager walked by and asked him to turn off his music. The colleague continued to make a scene at his desk, saying, "Forget this," and walked out. He came in late the next day, still upset and slamming things on his desk. He maintained this attitude for 3 days, during which there was another meeting where he was advised to be more mature. He was 35 years old. Story 24. I live in a small town where all the peaked in high school athletes now have children who are old enough to play sports. I recently saw a man who has his picture on the high school wall of fame because he had one good year of wrestling lose his composure with his 8-year-old son for striking out in baseball. This 36-year-old man, who weighs over 300 pounds and couldn't jog to first base, was screaming, "I told you to hit the ball," while his son was in tears. This is quite common, and it's sad. Many of these men live such unhappy lives that they need to relive their glory days through their children, resulting in public meltdowns and tears because their children aren't performing well enough for them. Story 25. At Orange County, California, John Wayne Airport, a graduate school friend I was traveling with laid down on her soft luggage on the floor and cried like a toddler because she missed her flight. I had never seen such a spectacle. The airline desk workers were alarmed and came over to reassure her that there were other flights available later. She was in her 30s. Story 26. It was around Christmas. I was at the airport waiting to fly home to see family. I heard a disturbance coming from the flight check-in counter and turned to see a grown man, probably in his 40s, beat red in the face and screaming at the employee behind the counter. I walked a bit closer to hear the conversation. "I want a new ticket. I don't know when my flight is supposed to leave." "Sir, the flight time is printed on your ticket right there." "Yeah, but it's in military time. I don't want a ticket in military time. Get me one that has normal time on it. I can't read military time." Another man stepped in to break up the altercation, and the man who couldn't read a clock stormed off. He never ended up getting a new ticket. Story 27. I witnessed a man throw his entire suitcase down an escalator over a canceled flight. Luckily, no one else was on it, but I did wish he had fallen down after it, to be honest. Story 28. At an old job working at a gas station connected to a popular retail chain, a customer who was speaking very quietly poorly explained what he wanted on his lottery ticket, and I got one number wrong. Normally, this is no big deal. I typically send them inside to customer service, as they can refund the ticket and print the correct one. However, this was not acceptable for this man. He screamed and shouted about how I was trying to rip him off and steal his money, even giving me death threats. He insisted that I refund him immediately, or he would break in and harm me. I calmly pointed out that he was being recorded by several cameras, that I had several weapons with me, and there were other customers behind him. I told him he could either go to customer service to get his refund as I had been advising, or I would call the police, resulting in him being taken away and likely facing a misdemeanor charge for threats of violence, especially since we had video evidence that included audio. Eventually, my words seemed to get through to him, and he angrily stormed off to the store, where, unsurprisingly, customer service was able to fix his issue. Story 29. A new temporary employee was fired, so he gathered his belongings from the break room and exited the building, punching holes in the walls, ripping down posters, and destroying anything he could find. All of it was deducted from his paycheck, and my boss and I laughed, noting that his paycheck amounted to about 30 cents for a full week of work. Story 30. A woman in the food court was yelling at the cashier because her soup was too cold. When the cashier told her to wait while she attended to another customer's order, the angry customer grabbed her cup and splashed the cold soup on the cashier. The cashier called security, and the upset customer was escorted out of the mall, screaming all the way. Story 31. I have a customer who refuses to use anything more than a flip phone. He called in an order, and I misheard him or something and short-ordered him 2 items. When he came to pick up the order and found it was too short, he lost it. I calmed him down, and then he asked, "Why did this happen?" When I said, "Honestly, I misheard you and it was an honest mistake," he couldn't accept that and kept asking, "Why did this happen?" It got to a point where he got into my face. I am not easily intimidated, and that made him even more angry. He finally just said, "Forget this." when I wouldn't back down and left in a hurry. I didn't see or hear from him for 2 years. The next time he came in, he knew I had the answer he needed and was overly nice to me. Story 32. I don't know if this is the biggest incident I've seen, but it happened within the past 12 months, so it's somewhat fresh in my mind. I had gone to get food at Five Guys one night when a lady came in with her dog. I don't know if having the dog was an issue, as another man had his dog with him without any problem. I'm not entirely sure what triggered the entire situation, except that it involved the lady's dog. She started screaming and stamping her feet, yelling at the employee and using abusive language. She then claimed that she lived in a building with bedbugs and threatened to spread them to everyone in the store. Eventually, she was escorted out but lingered around the windows outside and started recording on her phone. She was still there when I got my food and left, so I'm sure more chaos ensued, but I was long gone by that point. Story 33. I witnessed an adult tantrum. My manager had to fire an employee for excessive tardiness, absenteeism, and consistently being short in his cash drawer, which was a major problem at the financial institution where he worked as a teller. She took him into her office but was concerned about his reaction, as he was quite dramatic and weighed about 200 pounds more than us, so she left her office door open, just in case. I asked the security guard to stand near my desk, which was right outside the office. As she broke the news, he started yelling, "No, no, no." He then picked up a pair of scissors and held them over his head in a threatening manner while she tried to calm him down. After putting the scissors down, he ran out of the office and into the open area near my desk. He threw off his blazer and ripped his shirt open, buttons popping off and flying everywhere. He then ran up the stairs to the mezzanine, lay down on the floor on his stomach, and literally kicked his feet and pounded the floor with his fists like a baby having a tantrum in a cartoon. The building shook. Thankfully, we were closed, so there were no customers present. Eventually, he calmed down. The security guard and another teller, who was planning to attend the police academy, helped him collect himself. He then went down the teller line, saying goodbye to each employee while the guard redirected him, as they were all startled. The employee, who aspired to be a police officer, drove him home. It was both scary and appalling. 2 days later, he returned to apologize to the manager, say goodbye to me, ask the manager if he could still attend the Christmas party, and request the buttons from his shirt. I hope he got his life together eventually. Story 34. I worked at a Crumble Cookies in a wealthy, touristy neighborhood. A woman in her mid-40s had placed a carry-out order through the app. She arrived about 20 minutes late to pick up her order, and by that time we had become so busy that we had to use some of her cookies to fulfill orders for customers who were on time or early for their pickups and deliveries. She was in the street in her large luxury SUV and called us, saying, "There's nowhere to park, so I'm in the road with my hazards on. Just bring them out to me." This was against our policy. We were not allowed to deliver across or into the street. She needed to either park or come inside. When I informed her that her order would take about 5 more minutes, she lost her temper. She screamed into the phone so loudly that it garbled her words. I kept hearing phrases like, "terrible customer service," and "I'm not moving." I tried to explain that hers was the next order in line and we would have it out as quickly as possible, but she kept interrupting me with her shouting. Eventually, cars in the road that she was blocking began honking, causing her to hang up. She swerved into our parking lot, put her hazards on in the middle of one of the lanes, blocking other customers trying to leave, and called again to continue her rant. Fortunately, by that time, we had her order ready. I told her I would be out in a moment, and she hung up. When I brought her order out, she didn't say a word, just frowned at me and placed the cookies in her car. I am not usually confrontational, but I couldn't resist cheerfully saying, "Thank you for your patience, ma'am." She gave me an intense look, as if she were trying to figure out how to blast me away with laser eyes. Unable to do that, she angrily replied, "Bye," and left. Story 35. When I was a chef, I worked 2 and sometimes 3 jobs. I was at job number 3, a greasy spoon spot in rural Colorado, and had not slept in 2 days. I fired an order of over-medium eggs when my boss told me to take care of something. I forgot the eggs while putting away food, and the chef owner was standing in the kitchen. I proceeded to scorch the eggs. No big deal, it was only about 45 cents worth of eggs. Suddenly, this man grabbed the pan and threw it at the wall where the knives were hanging, breaking the pan in half and sending hot oil and knives flying around our tiny kitchen. He then proceeded to scream at me for 5 minutes in our open kitchen while I cleaned up the mess he had created. I refired the eggs, sent out the plate, and the customer was happy. Later that day, when I quit via text after going to my first job, he called me 26 times in 30 minutes, leaving voicemails ranging from "Motherf asterisk 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 and the asshole" to "I will F asterisk 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 and to kill you." Then he texted me 45 times over the next 8 hours, threatening my life and telling me never to contact his wife or anyone involved with the business again. Story 36. I worked as a youth pastor at a chain restaurant. On New Year's Day, I brought in 9 teenagers after a lock-in at their church. We were the only restaurant in town open at 6 a.m., and with 3 people calling out sick, we had just 1 cook, 1 waitress, me, and 1 shift supervisor for about 60 seated customers, plus a line out the door. The pastor threw a fit when I offered coffee, insisting that caffeine was bad for teenagers. He then proceeded to order Cokes for everyone. We were already running low on food because 2 other restaurants we expected to be open were closed, and our manager was not good at managing inventory. Many of the items they ordered, such as Eggs Benedict, were unavailable. The pastor was extremely rude to me. I worked hard to keep their Cokes refilled and got pancake, egg, bacon, and sausage orders out quickly. Despite being rowdy, the kids were generally well behaved. He attempted to leave without paying, and when I stopped him, he yelled at me in front of more than 75 people, claiming my customer service was so poor that we didn't deserve to be paid. He threatened to complain to corporate. My shift supervisor intervened, recognized him, and told him that Jesus doesn't approve of cheating. The youth pastor then screamed at him and called me derogatory names because I had short hair. In the end, I received no tip, just a handful of Chick tracts, and 2 kids flipped their water glasses upside down, creating a mess when I tried to move them. Such good Christians. Story 37. I was waiting to board a flight once, and they were accepting family boarding. A woman and her husband approached with 2 or 3 children, all under the age of 2, and a large folded stroller. I'm not sure what the exact issue was, but they were informed they needed to handle the stroller differently, which caused a delay in their boarding. Suddenly, the mother began yelling her part of the conversation. All I heard was her complaining that this is how loyal white American families are treated, and that you'd think they were terrorists. The funniest part was that not a single person reacted to this outburst. Her husband looked obviously humiliated but remained silent. All of this over common-sense airport rules and a minor inconvenience to them, as the airline actually paused the boarding process to help them resolve the situation while still allowing priority family boarding. Story 38. My date and I were playing mini golf when he missed the hole, threw down his club, and started yelling. That was the first and last date. Story 39. I have seen several incidents involving drugs or alcohol, but I once witnessed an intense outburst from a woman that was absolutely unreal. She must have been suffering mentally from something. The most entertaining incident involved a beautiful, obviously wealthy girl throwing a toddler-like tantrum outside a club in Sweden. She attempted to enter, but the bouncer asked her to wait in line. Displeased, she tried to push her way in before losing control. She stamped her feet, screamed, threw objects, and hammered her fists on him until another bouncer carried her away. She walked in circles, shouting. It was wild. It was also light outside, so everyone walking along the harbor in Stockholm could see her have her little princess meltdown. Story 40. I saw a woman stealing packs of 12 croissants in plastic. When security stopped her from leaving, she became aggressive and started throwing handfuls of croissants. It was quite a scene. I wish I could have seen more, but as I was leaving a Safeway, I try my best not to gawk when people are having difficult moments. Story 41. When I worked at Starbucks, there was a person who came in just for a cup of water. She would walk in, raising her voice and cursing in front of customers and their children. One day, She reached over the bar and grabbed one of my barista's wrists because she was in a bad mood. I told her she needed to leave and was not allowed to come back again. She stood in the doorway, cursing and screaming at me, and threatened to harm me, all in front of a lobby full of customers, about 30 people. A few weeks later, she returned and made another scene. A customer decided to stand up for the workers, even though it was my day off and I was not there. She grabbed a coffee from the handoff area and threw it at the customer, then spat on his children. Meanwhile, she continued to yell, curse, and threaten everyone in the store. One of the baristas sent me a video of the incident, and I was shocked. I didn't know how to react. Apparently, the customer she assaulted filed a police report, and she now has a warrant for assault. Story 42. I used to work at Publix. An old man walked in, went to the deli, bought a fried chicken meal box, and lost it because there wasn't any gravy included with the meal. The only time we ever had gravy as a side was Thanksgiving, and we explained this to him. "How am I supposed to eat my fried chicken with no gravy?" he shouted, red in the face and stomping up and down the aisles. Eventually, the store manager calmed him down and got him out the door, but it was a solid 30 minutes of complaints about a place that didn't have gravy for fried chicken. That incident ties with the woman who threw a bottle of wine at my head because the law in my state would not allow me to sell it to her before 8:30 in the morning. I really disliked working there. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.